Your daughter isn't polished enough for the family portrait. Those braces ruin the aesthetic. We need her out of the shot. I stood there in my parents' living room, my 12-year-old daughter Maisie standing right next to me, and watched my younger brother Reese smooth down his cashmere turtleneck like he'd just made a reasonable request about catering. Maisie's hand found mine. She squeezed once, then let go. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, and I smiled. If you've ever been dismissed by the very people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is for you. Let me take you back to where it started. I was the first Sinclair to build something from nothing. No trust fund, no seed money from Dad, no small loan to get started. Just me, a business degree from a state school, and 17-hour days for 6 years straight. By 32, I owned a chain of 3 dry cleaning locations in the suburbs outside Philadelphia. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make my mother's friends gasp at dinner parties. But it was mine, and it cleared $340,000 in profit last year alone. My parents never once asked about the business, not once in 6 years. What they did ask about, constantly, was when I was going to find someone after my divorce, when I was going to get Maisie into activities that matter instead of the robotics club she loved, when I was going to do something with my appearance because I'd let myself go since having a child. Reese, meanwhile, was their miracle, 5 years younger than me, private school education that cost $28,000 a year for 4 years, a college fund that covered his entire tuition at a small liberal arts school where he majored in communications, a graduation gift of a brand new BMW. I got a used Honda Civic and a speech about how the real world would teach me responsibility. Reese called himself a personal brand consultant. As far as I could tell, this meant he had 4,000 Instagram followers, wore exclusively black turtlenecks, and charged small business owners $200 an hour to tell them their logo needed more intentionality. His wife Victoria was worse. Victoria came from money. Old money that had somehow convinced her that having a great-grandmother who owned a textile mill made her genetically superior to anyone who'd worked for a living. She photographed well. She knew it. And she'd made the Sinclair family Christmas card her personal annual art project. Every year, Victoria selected the photographer. Victoria chose the location. Victoria approved the wardrobe for every family member, including my daughter. Last year, she'd sent me a 3-page PDF with acceptable color palettes and a note that said, Maisie should probably wear something that minimizes her midsection. Just a thought. My 12-year-old daughter, a midsection that needed minimizing. I didn't respond to that email. I just bought Maisie a bright red dress she picked out herself and told her she looked beautiful. Victoria's lips had pressed into a thin line when she saw it, but she didn't say anything. The photographer that year was someone she'd found through a friend of a friend, someone who owed her nothing. That was about to change. Here's something nobody in my family knew. 8 months ago, I bought Whitfield Portrait Studio. The previous owner, Eleanor Whitfield, was 73 and ready to retire. She'd built the business over 40 years. Every wealthy family in the county had their portraits done there. The Sinclairs had used Whitfield exclusively for 2 decades. Eleanor approached me at a Chamber of Commerce event. She'd heard I was a smart businesswoman. She wanted to sell to someone who'd respect what she'd built. The price was $180,000 plus inventory and equipment. I paid cash. I kept Eleanor's name on the door. I kept her staff. I stayed invisible in the background, handling the books and the business operations while her longtime employees handled the creative work. Nobody knew, not my parents, not Reese, not Victoria, especially not Victoria. She'd booked this year's family portrait session back in September, December 14th, 2 weeks before Christmas, prime holiday card timing. The deposit was $800. The full session with prints and digital files would run $3,200. I saw the booking come through. Dorothy Sinclair wasn't listed anywhere on the paperwork, just the Sinclair family, Victoria Sinclair, primary contact. I didn't say anything. I just waited. The week before Thanksgiving, my mother called. Dorothy, we're doing the family portrait on the 14th. Victoria's handling everything, but you need to be at the studio by 10. And please, for once, wear something appropriate. Maybe get your hair done. No, hello. No, how are you? No, how's Maisie doing in school? Just instructions. I'll be there, I said. And make sure Maisie wears something Victoria approves. She's sending options. I didn't respond to that. Dorothy, did you hear me? I heard you, Mom. Well, say something. I'll handle Maisie's outfit. The sigh on the other end could have powered a wind turbine. This is exactly why Victoria has to manage everything. You're so difficult. She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Reese texted the family group chat. Victoria had selected a theme, timeless elegance. The palette was cream, camel, and soft gold. She'd attached a Pinterest board with 47 images. 47. She'd also attached a list of portrait readiness guidelines. Hair must be professionally styled the morning of the shoot. No obvious roots. Nails must be manicured. Neutral tones only. Jewelry should be minimal and classic. No statement pieces. Children should be camera ready with polished appearances. I read that last line 3 times. Maisie had gotten braces 2 months ago. She'd needed them for years, but my ex-husband had dragged his feet on approving the expense from his portion of the child support arrangement. When I finally just paid for them myself, all $4,800, Maisie had cried happy tears in the orthodontist's office. She'd chosen teal bands for the brackets, her favorite color. I want people to see them, she'd told me. They're like jewelry for my teeth. I kissed the top of her head and told her she was absolutely right. Victoria's guidelines didn't mention braces specifically, but I knew they were coming. Thanksgiving at my parents' house confirmed it. Victoria spent most of the meal talking about the portrait session, the lighting she'd requested, the backdrop options she'd narrowed down, the specific poses she wanted for her and Reese in the center of the group. We're going for a magazine editorial feel, she said, spearing a piece of turkey with her fork. Very high-end, very curated. Sounds lovely, my mother said. She was beaming. Victoria could do no wrong. I've coordinated everyone's outfits with the studio's styling team. They're sending final approval tomorrow. Victoria glanced at me. Dorothy, I assume you received the guidelines? I did. And you'll be following them? I read them. Victoria's eye twitched just slightly. That wasn't my question. Maisie was sitting next to me, pushing mashed potatoes around her plate. She'd been quiet all day. My parents had barely spoken to her except to tell her to sit up straight. Maisie and I will be ready, I said. Good. Victoria's gaze slid to my daughter. She studied her for a moment too long. Maisie, sweetie, you got braces. Maisie looked up. Her smile was cautious. Yeah, 2 months ago. They're very colorful. Teal's my favorite color. Victoria nodded slowly. I see. She turned back to Reese and said nothing else, but I saw the look that passed between them. I saw Victoria's barely perceptible head shake. I saw Reese nod. Something was coming. It came 2 weeks later. The Saturday before the portrait session. My parents had called a quick family meeting at their house to finalize portrait details. Maisie and I arrived at 11. Reese and Victoria were already there, sitting on the formal living room sofa like they were posing for a magazine cover. Reese in his signature black turtleneck, Victoria in cream cashmere and gold jewelry. My mother was arranging coffee cups on the sideboard. My father was nowhere to be seen, probably in his study, avoiding anything that required actual participation. Dorothy, Maisie, sit down. My mother gestured to the love seat across from Reese and Victoria. We sat. Victoria cleared her throat. So, the portrait session. What about it? I asked. We need to discuss some adjustments to the grouping. I felt Maisie tense beside me. What kind of adjustments? Victoria looked at Reese. Reese looked at his shoes. Then he looked up at me with that expression he'd perfected over 30 years. The one that said whatever he was about to say was simply a reasonable observation that any logical person would agree with. It's about Maisie. My daughter's hand found mine again. Her fingers were cold. What about her? Victoria jumped in, her voice smooth as silk and twice as slippery. The thing is, Dorothy, we're investing a significant amount in this portrait. It's going to be displayed in your parents' home for years. Decades, potentially. It needs to be perfect. And we feel that... Victoria paused, arranging her face into something resembling sympathy. We feel that perhaps Maisie could sit this one out. The room went silent. Sit this one out, I repeated. Just this year. Victoria's hand fluttered dismissively. She can be in next year's portrait, of course, once the braces come off. Once the braces come off. They're just very... Victoria searched for the word. Prominent. The teal bands especially. They'll draw the eye in every single shot. Maisie's grip on my hand tightened. She's 12 years old, I said. She's my daughter. She's a Sinclair. Of course she is. Victoria's tone was patient, like she was explaining something obvious to a slow child. But this is about the overall composition, the family aesthetic. Surely you understand? I turned to my mother. Mom. My mother was studying her coffee cup. Victoria's put so much work into this, Dorothy. Maybe it's not the worst idea. You want your granddaughter excluded from the family portrait because of her braces? It's not about excluding anyone. My mother finally looked up. Her expression was tired, annoyed. It's about presenting the family properly. You've always been so sensitive about these things. I looked at my father's empty chair. His study door was closed. His silence was louder than any words. Then Reese spoke. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked directly at me with his practiced sincerity face, the one that landed him clients, the one that made people believe he had their best interests at heart. Look, Dorothy, I'm going to be honest with you. This is about image, the Sinclair image, and right now, Maisie just isn't... He paused, searching for words like he was doing me a favor by softening the blow. Your daughter isn't polished enough for the family portrait. Those braces ruin the aesthetic. We need her out of the shot. He said it like it was nothing, like he was suggesting we use a different napkin color. Victoria nodded approvingly. My mother sipped her coffee. My father's study door stayed closed. And Maisie, my brilliant, kind, creative daughter who'd sobbed with joy over getting braces because she'd wanted them for so long. My daughter who'd chosen teal bands because she wanted people to see them. My daughter who was sitting right there, hearing every word. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She just looked at me with those steady brown eyes and waited. The room was silent. Reese was already reaching for his phone, assuming the matter was settled. Victoria was smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her cashmere. My mother was arranging sugar cubes like this was any other Saturday. Nobody was looking at Maisie. Nobody ever looked at Maisie. I stood up slowly, and I smiled. You know what, Reese? You're absolutely right. The words came out calm, measured, almost pleasant. Reese looked up from his phone, surprised. Victoria's perfectly threaded eyebrows lifted. Even my mother stopped arranging her sugar cubes. I'm sorry, Reese said. You're right. This is about image, about presenting the family properly. I squeezed Maisie's hand once, then released it. And I completely understand. Victoria's face cycled through confusion, then suspicion, then cautious triumph. Well, good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Of course. I smoothed my jacket. Maisie, honey, get your coat. We're leaving. Dorothy. My mother's voice carried that familiar warning tone. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, Mom. I'm being reasonable. Reese said Maisie isn't polished enough for the family portrait. Victoria said she ruins the aesthetic. You agreed. I picked up my purse. So we're removing ourselves from the situation. Problem solved. That's not... Reese started. The session is December 14th, right? 10 a.m. at Whitfield Portrait Studio? Victoria nodded slowly, still trying to read my expression. Perfect. You'll have your polished portrait. No teal braces in sight. I put my hand on Maisie's shoulder. Let's go, sweetheart. We walked out. Nobody followed us. In the car, Maisie was quiet for 3 blocks. Then she spoke. Mom, are you okay? I glanced at her. My daughter. My brilliant, perceptive, stronger than anyone knew daughter. I'm fine, baby. You're smiling? Am I? It's kind of scary. I laughed. Actually laughed. You know what, Maisie? I think it's been a long time coming. What has? I didn't answer. I just drove. That night, after Maisie was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and pulled up the Whitfield Portrait Studio booking system. December 14th, The Sinclair family. Victoria Sinclair, primary contact, 10 a.m., Studio A, full portrait package, deposit paid, $800. I stared at the entry for a long time. Then I opened Victoria's email address in the system and began to type. Dear Mrs. Sinclair, we regret to inform you that due to an unexpected scheduling conflict, we are unable to accommodate your portrait session on December 14th. We have attempted to reschedule, but unfortunately, our calendar is fully booked through the remainder of the year and into the spring season. Your deposit of $800 will be refunded in full within 5 to 7 business days. We apologize for any inconvenience and wish your family a wonderful holiday season. Warm regards. Whitfield Portrait Studio. My thumb hovered over the send button. I thought about 20 years of being invisible, 20 years of watching Reese get everything while I scraped for scraps, 20 years of my parents looking through me like I was furniture. I thought about Victoria's 3-page PDF suggesting my daughter's body needed minimizing. I thought about Maisie sitting in that living room, hearing her uncle say she wasn't polished enough to be photographed with her own family. I thought about the teal bands she'd chosen because she wanted people to see them. My thumb moved slowly, deliberately across the trackpad. Click. The soft, unmistakable sound of confirmation echoed in my quiet kitchen. Sent. I closed my laptop, poured myself a glass of wine, and slept better than I had in months. The call came at 7:43 a.m. I was making Maisie breakfast when my phone lit up. Victoria's name on the screen. I let it ring through to voicemail. A minute later, a text. Call me. Now. It's about the portrait session. I buttered Maisie's toast. Another text. The studio canceled. They said they're booked. This is unacceptable. I poured orange juice. Another text. I've been using Whitfield for 6 years. 6 years. They cannot do this to me. I handed Maisie her plate and kissed the top of her head. Who keeps texting? She asked. Nobody important? By noon, I had 14 missed calls. Victoria, Reese, my mother, even my father, which was notable since he usually pretended phones hadn't been invented. The voicemails were a symphony of escalating panic. Victoria, 8:15 a.m. Dorothy, have you heard from Whitfield? They canceled our session. I need you to call them. You must know someone who can fix this. Reese, 9:02 a.m. Hey, sis. So, weird situation with the portrait studio. Victoria's losing her mind. Any chance you could reach out to them? I know you're connected with business people. My mother, 10:47 a.m. Dorothy, answer your phone. Victoria is beside herself. The Christmas cards are supposed to go out by the 20th. Call me back immediately. Victoria, 11:33 a.m. I've called every photographer in the county. No one has availability before Christmas. No one. This is a disaster. I don't know what you said to them, but you need to fix it. That last one made me laugh out loud. I didn't respond to any of them. At 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Victoria standing on my porch, Reese hovering behind her like a cashmere-wrapped shadow. Victoria's normally immaculate appearance showed cracks. Her hair was slightly disheveled. Her lipstick had faded. She was clutching her phone like a lifeline. Dorothy. Her voice was strained. We need to talk. Do we? The portrait session. It's been canceled. I heard. You need to help us fix this. I leaned against my doorframe. Why would I do that? Victoria blinked. Because we're family. Funny. Last time I checked, my daughter wasn't family enough to be in your portrait. That's not... Reese started. That's exactly what you said, Reese. She isn't polished enough. Those were your words. Victoria stepped forward, her composure cracking. Look, Dorothy, I don't know what you think is happening here, but this is not about Maisie. The studio canceled. Whitfield Portrait Studio. They said they're fully booked for the rest of the year. That doesn't happen. Eleanor has been photographing this family for decades. Eleanor retired 8 months ago. Victoria's eyes narrowed. What? Eleanor Whitfield. She retired. Sold the business. I smiled. To me. The silence stretched for exactly 4 seconds. Then Victoria's face went white. You? She couldn't finish the sentence. I own Whitfield Portrait Studio. Have for 8 months. Every booking request, every deposit, every scheduling decision goes through my system. I pulled out my phone and read from the screen. The Sinclair family, Victoria Sinclair, primary contact, full portrait package, deposit, $800, refunded. You canceled our session? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I canceled the session of a family that decided my daughter wasn't polished enough to be photographed with them? Yes. You can't do this. I own the studio, Victoria. I can do exactly this. Reese finally found his voice. Dorothy, come on. This is insane. It was just a suggestion about the portrait grouping. We didn't mean... You said my daughter ruins the aesthetic. I was trying to... You said it in front of her. She was sitting right there. She heard every word. Reese's mouth opened and closed. Do you know what she asked me in the car afterward? I stepped onto the porch and they both stepped back. She asked if she was ugly. My 12-year-old daughter asked if she was ugly because her uncle told her she wasn't good enough to be in a family photo. She's being dramatic. She's 12, Reese. She's 12 years old, and you told her that her braces make her unworthy of standing next to you. Victoria recovered enough to jut her chin forward. Fine. We'll find another photographer. This isn't the only studio in Pennsylvania. Good luck. December's the busiest season for family portraits. Most studios are booked 3 months in advance. I smiled. But you know what? That's not my problem. Dorothy. My mother's voice came from behind Reese. She'd arrived without my noticing, probably parked down the street. This has gone far enough. Has it? You're punishing the entire family over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom. It was a choice. Reese chose to tell Maisie she wasn't good enough. Victoria chose to demand her exclusion. You chose to agree with them. I met her eyes. And now I'm choosing not to photograph a family that treats my daughter like she's disposable. You're being ridiculous. Maybe. But I'm also being the only person in this family who's ever protected that little girl from the people who are supposed to love her. My mother's face hardened. If you don't fix this, Dorothy, there will be consequences. Your father and I won't forget this. I'm counting on it. I stepped back inside. The studio is fully booked through spring. Your refund will arrive in 5 to 7 business days. Have a wonderful holiday. I closed the door. Through the window, I watched them stand on my porch for a full minute. Victoria was crying now. Actual tears streaking through her foundation. Reese was on his phone, probably calling other studios. My mother was staring at my door like she could burn it down with her eyes. Then slowly, they left. I turned around to find Maisie standing at the bottom of the stairs. She'd heard everything. Mom? Yeah, baby? You own the portrait studio? I do. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, you canceled their session because of what they said about me? I did. But now they don't have a Christmas card. Nope. Another pause. Then Maisie smiled. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen since Thanksgiving. Good. I opened my arms and she walked into them. I'm sorry you heard all of that, sweetheart. I'm not. She pulled back and looked at me with those steady brown eyes. I'm glad someone finally told them no. That night, my phone buzzed one final time. Reese, you've destroyed Victoria's Christmas. I hope you're happy. Don't bother coming to Mom and Dad's for the holidays. You're not welcome. I read it twice. Then I blocked his number. I blocked Victoria's number. I blocked my mother's number. I changed every emergency contact, every notification setting, every digital thread that connected me to the people who'd spent my whole life making me feel invisible. The silence that followed was the most peaceful thing I'd ever heard. The weeks after were quieter than I expected. No dramatic confrontations, no tearful apologies at my doorstep, just silence, stretching out like fresh snow across a field nobody walked through anymore. I'd braced myself for escalation, for my father to finally emerge from his study and deliver some cold ultimatum, for my mother to show up with reinforcements, for Reese to threaten legal action over the canceled session, as if being inconvenienced was somehow actionable. None of it came. A vague. What came instead was nothing. And nothing, it turned out, was exactly what I needed. Christmas morning, Maisie and I made pancakes shaped like snowmen. We watched old movies in our pajamas until noon. We video called her father, who'd moved to Seattle after the divorce, and she showed him the robotics kit I'd gotten her. She was already planning modifications. At 3 o'clock, we drove to my friend Janet's house for dinner. Janet was a single mom, too. Her daughter Priya was in Maisie's robotics club. We'd been doing holidays together for 2 years now, ever since I'd realized that chosen family was the only kind worth investing in. Janet's house smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey. Priya shrieked when she saw Maisie and dragged her upstairs to show off a new coding project. Janet handed me a glass of wine and didn't ask about my family. She already knew. I'd told her everything. "You okay?" she asked. "Better than okay. You look lighter." "I feel lighter." We clinked glasses. That evening, after dinner, Maisie and Priya put on a robot fashion show with the machines they'd built together. Janet and I applauded every clunky movement, every spinning wheel, every mechanical arm that waved at us from across the living room. Maisie was laughing, actually laughing, with her whole body, her teal braces flashing every time she smiled. I took a picture, then another, then 12 more. Later, I framed my favorite one. Maisie mid-laugh, eyes crinkled, braces on full display, holding a robot she'd built herself. I hung it in the living room, right where a family portrait might have gone. January brought news, the way small towns always deliver news, through whispers, through mutual acquaintances, through the grocery store checkout line where everyone pretends not to listen while hearing everything. Victoria's Christmas cards never went out. She'd tried, apparently. Called every photographer within a 100-mile radius, offered to pay triple rates. Even attempted to hire a wedding photographer from New Jersey who'd driven 2 hours only to realize he didn't have the right equipment for the editorial magazine feel, Victoria demanded. The session was a disaster. Harsh lighting, awkward poses. Victoria had cried in front of everyone, and the photographer had left early, refunding half his fee just to escape. In the end, they'd used a stock photo. A stock photo? Someone from my mother's garden club told someone from Janet's book club who told Janet who told me. Victoria had purchased a stock image of a generic wealthy family, 4 models arranged around a fireplace, matching cream sweaters, perfect teeth. She'd photoshopped Sinclair across the bottom in elegant script and sent it to 200 people. Nobody was fooled. Everyone noticed that none of the people in the photo looked anything like actual Sinclairs. The whispers were vicious. By February, I heard more. Reese's personal brand consulting business had been struggling for months. What I hadn't known, what nobody had known, was that he'd been supplementing his income with monthly transfers from our parents. $3,000 every month for the past 4 years. That's $144,000. I did the math. I always did the math. When Victoria's Christmas card disaster became social currency among my mother's circle, the embarrassment triggered something. My father, silent enabler that he'd always been, finally spoke. He told Reese the monthly payments were ending. "You're 30 years old," he'd reportedly said. "Figure it out." Without the subsidy, Reese couldn't make rent on their downtown apartment, the one with the exposed brick and the view of the river that Victoria had insisted was essential for client meetings. They moved in March, into my parents' basement. The basement. Victoria, who'd spent 6 years curating a lifestyle brand built on cashmere and elevated living, was now sharing a bathroom with my mother's collection of holiday decorations and my father's old exercise equipment. I heard she'd cried for 3 days straight. Spring brought more unraveling. Reese's clients started disappearing. Turns out, personal brand consultant doesn't carry much weight when your own personal brand involves moving into your parents' basement and sending stock photo Christmas cards. Word travels in business communities. Reputation matters. By April, he was down to 2 clients. By May, 1. Victoria tried to pivot. She launched a lifestyle blog called Graceful Living that featured tips on elegant entertaining and curated home aesthetics. The irony of writing about elegant entertaining from a basement was apparently lost on her. The blog got 47 followers. Most of them were bots. She deleted it after 3 weeks. Meanwhile, my parents' house became a pressure cooker. My mother, who'd always prided herself on appearances, now had to explain to her friends why her adult son and daughter-in-law were living downstairs. The explanations grew more elaborate. A temporary transition, a strategic consolidation, an intentional simplification, Nobody believed any of it. My father retreated further into his study. His silence, which had always been permission for cruelty, now became avoidance of consequences. He'd enabled a monster for 30 years, and the monster had moved into his basement and couldn't pay its own phone bill. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach out. I didn't do anything at all. I just lived my life. That summer, Maisie's robotics team won the regional championship. She stood on a stage in front of 300 people, braces gleaming, holding a trophy almost as big as she was. I screamed so loud I lost my voice for 2 days. Janet was there. Priya was there. Maisie's father flew in from Seattle and cried when they announced her name. We all went out for ice cream afterward, and Maisie got chocolate sauce on her championship t-shirt and didn't care even a little bit. That was the day I realized something had shifted. Not just in me, in her. She wasn't looking over her shoulder anymore, wasn't bracing for criticism, wasn't making herself small to avoid being noticed. She was just Maisie. Brilliant, creative, teal-braced Maisie, taking up exactly as much space as she deserved, which was all of it. Fall brought one final piece of news. Victoria filed for divorce. The basement, apparently, had been the last straw. Or maybe it was watching her brand disintegrate. Or maybe it was realizing that the man she'd married for his family connections couldn't actually provide any of the things she'd expected. She moved back to her parents' estate in Connecticut. Last I heard, she was rediscovering herself through pottery classes and trying to become an influencer for divorced women in their 30s. She had 127 followers. Some of them were probably real. Reese stayed in the basement. My mother called once, about a month after the divorce was finalized. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail. "Dorothy, it's your mother." Long pause. "I was hoping we could talk. About everything. About Maisie. About..." Another pause. "We may have been too harsh. Your father thinks we should try to reconnect." I listened to it twice, then I deleted it. Some doors close for good reasons. Walking back through them doesn't reopen possibilities. It just tracks old mud into new rooms. I had new rooms now, clean ones. Rooms filled with robotics trophies and pictures of laughing children and friends who showed up without being asked. Rooms where nobody told my daughter she wasn't polished enough. Rooms where I could finally breathe. A year later, on the anniversary of that Saturday in my parents' living room, Maisie and I went to Whitfield Portrait Studio. Not for a family portrait, just for us. We wore whatever we wanted. I wore a green sweater that my mother would have called unflattering. Maisie wore a purple dress she'd picked out herself and the teal banded braces she'd had for 2 years now. We took serious pictures, silly pictures, pictures where we made ridiculous faces, pictures where we held up our hands in matching peace signs, pictures where Maisie sat on my lap like she was 5 years old again and we both laughed until we couldn't breathe. The photographer, Elena, had worked at Whitfield for 15 years. She knew my whole story by now. When we finished the session, she pulled me aside. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. In all my years doing this, I've never seen anyone smile the way that kid smiles." I looked at Maisie, who was examining the studio lights with the analytical focus she brought to everything. "She's got good teeth," I said. Elena laughed. "She's got a good mother." I framed the best picture from that session. Maisie and me, side by side, both grinning like idiots, her braces catching the light, my arm around her shoulders. Neither of us polished, neither of us perfect, both of us exactly enough. I hung it next to the one from Priya's house, and the one from the robotics championship, and the one from Janet's Christmas dinner, and the 12 others from every moment worth remembering in the past year. A whole wall of pictures. A whole wall of people who loved us for who we actually were. My mother would have hated it. Too cluttered. Too casual. No unified aesthetic. I loved it more than anything I'd ever owned. Last week, Maisie came home from school with news. "Mom, guess what?" "What?" "I got elected captain of the robotics team." I screamed. Again. She's going to have to get used to the screaming. That night, over celebratory pizza, she asked me something. "Mom, do you ever miss them?" I knew who she meant. The people we'd walked away from, the family that had never really been family at all. I thought about it honestly, about 20 years of invisibility, about monthly transfers and canceled sessions and basement apartments, About a little girl hearing she wasn't polished enough to stand next to people who'd never deserved to stand next to her. No, I said. I don't. Maisie nodded like she'd expected that answer. Me neither. She reached for another slice of pizza. Mom? Yeah, baby? Thanks for being my family. I looked at my daughter, my brilliant, kind, teal-braced daughter who'd never again have to wonder if she was enough. Thanks for being mine. She smiled. Oh, the biggest smile, braces and all. I took a picture. That's the only legacy that matters.